we will have Abdullah Cakmak with his presentation from Afyon Kocatepe University, Theology. Esteemed Chair, esteemed speakers, esteemed colleagues, esteemed participants, first of all, I would like to express my wholehearted regards to all of you. Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif during Ottoman Empire and Hajj journey. First of all, as I'm the first speaker, Hajj organization during Ottoman Empire. So what was the practice in general? I would like to make my introduction on this topic. Ottoman Empire entered Hijaz in 1517 with Yavuz Sultan Selim. However, Mecca and Medina cities are the Holy Lands, and the interest of the Ottoman Empire dates back before the time of Yavuz Sultan Selim. Foundations established, and thanks to the donations sent to these provinces, Ottoman Empire had always shown their interest to Mecca and Medina. And in 1517, after the annexation of Mecca and Medina to Ottoman Empire, the sultans of these holy lands and the Muslims living in the cities and their guardianship took a new turn, and this was an important tool of legitimacy for the Ottoman Empire. Of course, this legitimacy's most visible format is during the Hajj organization in Hajj season. Syria, and with the annexation of Egypt, Ottoman Empire gained dominance over Red Sea, Anatolia, Balkans, Caucasia, Idil Basin, and North Africa, and in Arabian provinces, Muslims living in this area and their therefore journey to pilgrimage was controlled by Ottoman Empire. Harem-i Şerif'in was the approach of Ottoman Empire sultans, and especially in the organization of Hajj, they took important measures. In Ottoman territory, for Hajj journey, the routes identified composed of 5 main centers. These were Damascus, Egypt, Baghdad, Hadramut, and together with the start of use of sea ways, Ibde port. And in our paper, in month of Recep, starting from Üsküdar, Ayrılık Fountain, where we know as Sultan Yolu, the Sultan's route, the route reaches to Damascus and then goes to Hijaz, which comprises the group going to Hajj. So the caravan starting from Üsküdar, Akşehir, Karaşehir, Antalya, Antakya, and through these routes they would reach Damascus, and they would combine in Damascus with caravans coming from other places in the world. Mefrak, Müzeyin, Aynizar, Kamaan, Zatül Hajj, and Tebük would be the routes that they would follow, and they would reach Al-Uya. And in Al-Ula region, the caravan would be handed over to Mecca Amir, and then the travel to Mecca and Medina would start. In the first quarter of 19th century, mainly land routes would be used on Hajj journey. Horses, mules, and donkeys and camels would be used as means of transport. And in the second half of the 19th century, with steamships' invention and together with their usage as a means of transport, sea travel became to be used as an option for Hajj. They would reach Jeddah port through the sea route, and from Jeddah to Mecca and Medina, they would reach again by land. In 1908, with the completion of Hijaz Railroad, thanks to Abdul Mecid, there was important changes in the means of transport. So, what is Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif? This notion is witnessed a lot in the literature. Especially while I was doing my PhD, on Jerusalem during Ottoman Empire, I would frequently witness this notion being used. However, in the organization of Hajj during Ottoman Empire, Emirul Hajj, this is the person responsible from the organization of Hajj. And Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif, of course, this symposium organized by Presidency of Religious Affairs allowed me to elaborate on this issue. So therefore, I would like to thank the organizers of this symposium for allowing me to do so. Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif was used for the group of pilgrims used by Ottoman Empire. So the fact that there is no individual study on this issue caused me to start working on that. So Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif, what kind of measures were taken for them or for the organization of Hajj? What was the position of Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif? Especially Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif, the moment the caravan, the group started, set off from Üsküdar, from Istanbul, until it reached Hejaz region, or the way back from Hejaz to Istanbul, all the time they would be followed by the Ottoman Empire. And how? Of course, what we know as the location information. We don't even need navigation. We all now use our mobile phone. People are now using their phones saying that I'm in Arafat, I'm in Mina right now. Our pilgrims can inform and can contact their families whenever they want. And as in that era there was no such possibility, Ottoman Empire followed this way. For example, especially through the local authorities, the pilgrim groups, which is the Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif, they would receive information about the location of the group. From Damascus to Hejaz, Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif, once they reach Hejaz, they would inform the headquarters in the Ottoman Empire through the governorate in Damascus. Tebşir, which is giving good news, would be used to say that the group of pilgrims reached Damascus or to Hejaz, to Mecca, Medina. So Tebşir notion, which is the good news, would be used. Emirul Hajj is important in this respect and related to Emirul Hujjab and its description. I have some notes in my paper, but I do not want to waste my time on that. Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif, upon its arrival to Hejaz, upon the completion of the duty of Hajj, the person who makes the news reach the Ottoman Empire was the governor of Damascus. And the emir of Mecca and Medina would give this good news as well. From local authorities, Damascus governor, and Medina and Mecca emirs would always share the location of the group with the headquarters in Istanbul. The officials of Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif, of course, during this journey, they would accompany the group, and there were a lot of officials. The guardians, the guardianship, the treasury clerk, the person who would be responsible of camels, the good news bearer, and the guardian's responsibility. Starting from Damascus, especially against any attacks from Bedouins, they were Emirul Hajj. However, the responsible person. In 1862, Mevkib-i Hajj, who set off from Istanbul, during their journey, their food and drink needs, basic needs, to cover them and to ensure their road safety, the special guard troops were established. The first one to be appointed was Mahmud Bey in 1862. This guard had an important feature, which was that, of course, Surre troop would set from Istanbul together with the Hajj pilgrims. So the donation group should reach in safety to Mecca and Medina, and they had a role to play as well. So if this donation emir would be ill or would pass away, so the second man, the second person who had an important role was Mevkib-i Hacc-ı Şerif guard. So if that emir had a problem, this person would control the donation group. And other officials' names related to guards, of course, we can say that the train started to be used and there was no longer a need for such position, and this official duty was abolished. These are mukavvims, what we call as the guards of the Hajj duty, who are the facilitators actually of the Hajj duty. Dümdars are the soldiers who would safeguard the troop and the group, the pilgrim group. And there are also the good news bearers, which are called Mübeşşir, sending the good news that the group had reached to Damascus, Mecca and Medina, to Istanbul headquarters. Hamuledar, or with other words, Akkam. These people would be responsible from carrying the belongings of the group. With their mules or horses, they would serve to the group of pilgrims. So in this period, especially related to Hajj expenditures, there were important debates. From time to time, they would increase, and certain measures had to be taken for that, especially in the expenditure units of 1867. Mevkib-i Hacc-ı Şerif guards' salaries and per diems were important items on the budget, and again other officials' salaries were important. Şişhane, ballots, soldiers responsible from protecting the group. They were important expenditure items, and there was a study initiated to restrict these expenditures because they were at important amounts. Mithat Pasha, which was the governor back then, they decided that the group should prefer the sea travel over Beirut rather than the land road. However, the group setting off from Istanbul by land had an importance for the Ottoman Empire. This proposal was declined, and Mevkib-i Hacc was not deemed appropriate to take sea travel. And again, related to Hajj expenditures, you can see the detailed information in my paper once it is published. If you are curious, you can read it. I want to be time efficient, so I will lastly talk about the quarantine. And in the previous session, in the Hajj organization, the problems were discussed caused by pandemic, and also during the Ottoman Empire, for many times the problems occurred again. In 1831, there was a big cholera epidemic, especially pilgrim candidates coming from India. They infected other pilgrims coming from different parts of the world, and once they got back to their homelands, cholera epidemic disseminated all over the world. Therefore, in 1866, there was a sanitation congress in Istanbul, and quarantine center was opened. And in Kamaran Island, on the route of Indian pilgrims, there was a quarantine center which was open. So, Mevkib-i Hajj-ı Şerif pilgrims quarantine. How was it taken care of? For that, after the duty of Hajj was completed, they would be gathered in the quarantine center for 10 days, and their conditions were observed, and there was a report sent back to the headquarters at any time, especially during periods of epidemic, Hajj-ı years. As we know, Hajj-ı is the Friday of Hajj duty. For example, 1865 was Hajj-ı year, and more than 100,000 pilgrims came to Mecca on that day. Sorry, we completed our time in order to be respectful to the next speakers and in order not to steal their time. Could you please wrap up, sir? In 1 minute, I will wrap up. In 1893, approximately 200 to 300 pilgrims arrived at Holy Lands, and in the quarantine center, pilgrims coming from Anatolia and Caucasia, they were taken under quarantine in this important center. So in conclusion, I can say that the organization of Hajj by Ottoman Empire, this specific term, Mevkib-i Hajj Şerif, from Istanbul to Damascus to Mecca, Medina to Hejaz, their whole journey would be monitored, and safety and health, all kind of measures were successfully taken. So thank you very much for your patience. Esteemed Professor, we would like to thank you a lot.